Hello and welcome. This is Matthias76 and you are here with us for our very first daily Decode live stream. You know, what's funny is I was getting ready to do this. I have been putting videos out on YouTube since November 1st of 2018. I went and looked that up today, scrolled down through. The first video I did was out on November 1st, 2018. It was on 1 Peter 5:6, and I also the same day put out a video about politics and the election stuff, and the title of that was What Has Changed. But here at Decoding the Deception, we've been doing this work now for over 4 years, and just so excited to get going with this live stream broadcast. And you know, I should have started it a long time ago. It just took me a while to get around to it, I guess. But we're glad that you're here. Got some interesting things that we are going to talk about tonight. Just a reminder, up here at the top right on the website, there's Contact Us. If you've got a topic that you would like for us to discuss here on this daily Decode live stream, you can click there. It'll take you to the contact page. You can fill that out and shoot it off to us, and that will come directly to my email. And if you've got an article that you think I'll find interesting that might be good to discuss, feel free to send it to us in that way. Now, I'll say this too. Who in the world decides to start something new with a video channel the week of Christmas? Right there, it's kind of comical in one sense, but I decided it's time to do it. We'll go ahead and get started. I know it's going to take time to build this up and to get people engaged and watching and used to it being here. But with that, just pray that this is blessed. Invite you to do the same. Pray that God blesses this work, because I believe that the work that we are doing here is truly important. There are so many things, so many ways that deception is playing out in our world. It is all around us. Enough introductory stuff. Let's jump right into the first thing that we're going to talk about tonight. This is from Zero Hedge. I like Zero Hedge, as you know, from the videos that I put out in the regular Decode videos. I put things out regularly that come through Zero Hedge. It's a good source of information. What this is about is the whole Twitter thing. FBI faces subpoenas after Twitter files exposing social media ties. House Republican. So there's this Republican congressman from Ohio. I don't know who he is. His name is here. His picture is here. And he's going to look for subpoena power, try to get subpoena power to look into this stuff that's been going on that had been going on with the elections with Twitter and the FBI. And the particulars of that, you've probably seen information on that. The FBI was having direct influence on who was getting scrubbed off of Twitter. And not only Twitter, no doubt if it's going on there, it was going on with the other social media platforms. So that's the big story. But I could have picked any one of a number of stories about Elon Musk, because there is no shortage of stories constantly about Elon Musk. I think of him as a walking psyop. Everything this guy does is manipulating the public. He is in some ways analogous to Bill Gates, but he's different. He's put out there as kind of the un-Bill Gates, but in reality they're incredibly similar. But he's used to lead people around by the nose. There is this thinking that is going on at large that he's going to really make a difference with Twitter, that things are going to change. And I don't believe, now, as far as how things go on Twitter, who gets to be on Twitter, yes, those things are going to change. But big picture, do you know what's going to change? Nothing is going to change. There will be a big hullabaloo. The Congress, now that is narrowly Republican, they've got the House. They're going to investigate. There will be hand-wringing. There will be pounding of fists on the table and people being angry and people called to testify. And there will be a whole lot of noise about that. And when all is said and done, do you know what's going to change? Nothing is really going to change. And I have to be careful in how I phrase things. The way things are tabulated in the choosing of public officials, and where things obviously were amiss, things were miscalculated, numbers were counted that shouldn't have been counted, all of that, none of that is going to be undone. None of it is going to be undone. Nothing is going to change. But they know that if they put it out there and it serves as a great big point of focus for a while and contention, and then all they have to do is switch the narrative. They switch the narrative. It goes to something else. And one of the stories we're going to take a look at this evening is a great example of that, how they flip the narrative, they change the narrative, they use the next big balderall to change everyone's focus. And then the other thing that had been so important, that everyone was so worked up about, that everyone was demanding change about that thing, it goes away and everyone forgets. So I find it fascinating. I do find Elon Musk very fascinating, the way he kind of reinvents himself and the way he puts himself out there. I mean, the guy has said that he is for basically authoritarian control, that we need more of that. And he is the guy who runs the company called Neuralink. Now, we hear about Tesla all the time. That's in the news today with Tesla's stock price going down, tied in with Twitter, and another story we'll take a peek at here in a moment about Twitter. But they talk about Tesla, they talk about SpaceX, they don't mention all that often Neuralink. Neuralink, the guy who is working on a computer AI brain interface to plug into us so that we can be controlled. That's ultimately where that goes. He is himself, and that's all about mind control. Big picture, looking forward, dystopian science fiction future. He is himself a walking psyop. The guy who is working on a company who's building the systems whereby, the technology whereby there can be mind control, is himself a walking psyop. And back to the stuff here with the story in front of us about Congress and the Republicans, and we have to come to an understanding that the entire left-right paradigm, the Republican-Democrat dichotomy, it is all a Hegelian dialectic mechanism of control. Because it's interesting, when I went and looked, and I told you I went and looked at the first videos I put out back in 2018, November of 2018, one of them was entitled, "What's Changed?" What's changed? And I didn't listen to the video again, but I'm pretty sure I remember what I talked about 4 years and 1 month ago. It doesn't matter who's in power. It doesn't matter. George W. Bush is in there. Nothing of the bad liberal stuff really went away. And then the next guy comes in. Nothing ever changes. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They keep things moving in the same agenda because in reality, there is no difference between the left and the right. They're all working in the same direction. They all answer to the same masters. It's just the way it is. And their masters who are behind the scenes, and I'm not talking about Soros, I'm not talking about Bezos, I'm not talking about the big power players in business. They are not the masters. The masters are at a higher level and they don't come out into the light. They stay in the dark, just like the list of the wealthiest people in the world. I laugh every time I see it. So-and-so is now the 2nd wealthiest man in the world. It's all sheer and utter nonsense because the most wealthy people in the world own the central banks of the world's nations, and they have more money than can possibly be calculated, and they do as they wish. And these people answer to them, whether they have an R after their name or a D after their name, because if you're not part of the system, trust me, you don't get there. That's why they talk the talk and then they go there and they don't walk the walk. It's all about, and what I try to do, what I try to help people to do is to think about things differently, look at the news differently, and understand that there is a reason that my channel, my thing that is decoding the deception, is this weird hybrid of scripture and political news analysis. I mean, most of the work that I do, and you can look here, we're back on the webpage, that is the list of the books of the Bible that we have worked through and taught. I've got 50 some videos on Revelation, still working on that. One comes out tomorrow. We're working through Genesis and John, but we've got some just random Bible teachings from different places in Scripture that we've done. But we've gone through the books of Exodus, Joshua, Psalms, Daniel, Matthew, 1st, 2nd Thessalonians, and Hebrews. That is the bulk of what we do, but yet we still talk about what we're talking about now. Why? Because we need to understand that the deception that goes on, it's not about politics. Politics is a tool. It's not about money. Money is a tool. It is a lever that moves things. It is spiritual. It is spiritual. And as we stand here, as we are, I truly believe that we are on the brink of the end times. As we stand here at this time, we need to understand that the only way to truly understand the deception, to decode it, to see it for what it is, and to not be swept away by it, is to realize that it is all spiritual. And it's profound. There are some very passages that you're familiar with and you look at it, but then you look at it a little bit different. You stop and you kind of turn it sideways a little bit and look at it from a different perspective. When Jesus is asked by his disciples, and this is I popped up my Bible program here in Matthew 24, when Jesus is at the very end of his ministry, and he's leaving Jerusalem for the last time. He went out and he just talked about the destruction of the temple, and he sits down with his disciples. I'm going to read a couple verses. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" And Jesus answered them. They wanted to know, how are we going to know? What are the signs? What's it going to be? And what's the first thing he says? And Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray." And that word for lead astray It is in the New International Version, and with the leading astray is a perfectly valid translation. In the New International Version, it says, "See, watch out that no one deceives you." Don't be deceived. Satan seeks to deceive, and he holds the halls of power in his hand. Jesus, at the beginning of his ministry, I believe it's Matthew 4, when he was tempted by Satan, Satan took him to a mountain and showed him in a moment of time the kingdoms of the world and said, "All of this I will give you if you bow down and worship me." And Jesus didn't say it's not yours to give. This world is under Satan's power. And we have here in Revelation 12:9, "And the great dragon, by Michael, was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan and the deceiver." Guess what that word is? It's the same Greek word, planao, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. So if we don't understand that the deception that takes place is spiritual in its intent, then we're going to miss it. And what are the major issues in society? The destruction of the family, the destruction of any kind of concept of God-given roles of gender, all of those kind of things. Children, those whom Jesus loves so much, all constantly under attack. Why? Because it is a spiritual battle, and we need to understand that if we are going to see through it all, and in the end, having done all, as Paul says in Ephesians 6, to stand. And I see somebody up there in the chat. If you're here and watching, feel free to pop something there in the chat. Got a good comment. Anita, deception in these days are mentioned at least 4 times more than anything else. That's true. That's very true. Deception is the current name of the game. But if you're out there and you want to pop something in the chat, and I'll say this, I want to make it clear. I have made probably 400 videos. Many of them are on BitChute, and they aren't on YouTube. Some are on YouTube that aren't on BitChute. I've made 400 videos. I'm new to this live streaming thing. Okay, it's a learning curve. I'm gonna have to learn to have one eye on the chat and what people might be saying. So bear with me, and please put up with my incompetence as I struggle along to learn. Just another quick thing on the Musk thing. It popped up as I was looking at news things, and I just had to put it in here. This story about Twitter users tell Elon Musk to step down in poll results. My first reaction to that is I just really don't care, but it's just more hype. It's just more, hey, look over here, look over there. Elon Musk is one huge distraction from other things that are going on in the world. And if you start to look at the news through the light of how are they trying to distract me and deceive? How are they trying to distract me so that I'm not thinking about important things that do matter, and instead I'm looking at polls on Twitter about whether Elon Musk should be running the company that he paid $44 billion for. Just a quick note too. We do have a video I put out just the other day. It's a decoding video, but it's called "Who Will Lead Them?" And it's just some thinking about how we ought to look at people who would be put out there by this world as leaders, people like Elon Musk, people like Donald Trump, but that's out there on BitChute, YouTube, and GabTV. Just one other quick note. I started out on YouTube. In that time that I started at November of 2018, it's like I decided and was led to jump into the stream just as the tide, as the current was really picking up, going against anything godly, anything Bible-based, anything pointing out deception and conspiracy and those evil things. So it was a long crawl, and eventually it got to where I couldn't put anything up on YouTube, so I moved to BitChute. For a while, I wasn't putting stuff on YouTube. Now I am, as much as I can. I know things that'll get strikes, and so I don't put them there. I just put an announcement, but put them on YouTube. So I do encourage you, if you are a YouTube subscriber, also subscribe over on BitChute, because we put a lot of stuff there. Let's talk about the distractions, switching from this to that. And after a while, if you're a thinking person, you go, well, wait a minute, what happened about this or this story? Where did that go? What came of that? And then it just slips your mind altogether, and we don't think about it anymore. Here is a story, again, from Zero Hedge. Found all the things I was fascinated with on Zero Hedge today, and we'll talk about news sources in a moment. I will come back to that. But here's the headline: Ukraine attempted decapitation strike of Russia's top general, even as U.S. tried to stop it. That's Dateline today, right there. That story came out today. Have you noticed what's happened in the news? And the little note that I made for myself was, I thought there was a war in Ukraine. Wasn't there a war in Ukraine? What happened to that? Do you notice how that story just kind of has slid into the background? Not that it's gone altogether, but for a while there, you couldn't look at your news feed, go to any news source, whatever one you might choose, without seeing Ukraine, 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 and the atrocities and whatever else. And I did a video on that. You can go out on my channel. It's entitled "Still Waiting for Honest Reporting on Ukraine." Did that a while back. But everything was Ukraine, and now it's just slid into the background, and you need to stop and ask, why? Why? This was a big wag the dog war. They were using it to move markets. They were using it in their efforts to bring about, I believe, their efforts to bring about financial calamity and the Great Reset, possibly a war on a real global scale. Who knows what they were thinking? But why did it go away? What happened? Well, you know what happened? FTX happened. That money laundering scheme, that was funding politicians, and not just Democratic politicians, Republican politicians, people on both sides of the aisle receiving tens of millions of dollars for their campaign, money that was being given to Ukraine. Do you know, and it might still be going on, I don't know, I didn't look to check, we were giving $1.5 billion a month to Ukraine. $1.5 billion. What were they doing? Were they buying nuclear missile submarines? Were they building aircraft carriers? What was all that money going for? Well, it turns out a good bit of the money came back to FTX, that Bitcoin type exchange, cryptocurrency exchange that was corrupt as the day is long. And then Bankman-Fried, whatever his name was pumping tons of money to political candidates. It is a textbook case of money laundering, and that has to go away. That has to go away. Hush, hush, hush. Kind of like Ghislaine, what's her name? The pedo stuff. Her trial, Ghislaine Maxwell, her trial goes on, and the people who were molesting these kids, the names never come out. Well, bet your bottom dollar that Sam Bankman-Fried is going to come back, get convicted, probably hang himself in jail. It happens. Hang himself in jail while on suicide watch, and the story will go away. But even if he does go to trial, names won't be named. Nobody in the halls of power, translate halls of corruption, is going to be held accountable, because that's the way those things work. But Ukraine has fallen into the background because there was this snag that messed things up. They are the lords of darkness. They are working their evil agenda. They are not all powerful. They hit snags. They hit problems, and they have to redo how they're trying to accomplish things. And I think that that's what we're seeing when it comes to Ukraine and that story. And again, if you want to, we got Anita putting a lot of stuff up here in the live chat. But if you're out there, feel free to pop up and say something in the live chat. I appreciate the input. Yes, Jesus definitely did say that lawlessness will increase. Another zero hedge story. Now, this is when I'm going to jump in. I don't just use zero hedge. And if you watch my decoding videos, you know that. This is what I recommend for everyone as far as where to get your news feed. Okay? You come here under Research and Resources here on the website, and you go to helpful websites. And I've got knowledge bases. I've got books to read. We'll talk about those another day. But you go to helpful websites, and it's going to bring up this page. And all it is links to websites like Patrick Wood's Technocracy News and Trends, Zero Hedge, Rare Foundation, Dr. Mercola, James Perloff. I got the U.S. Debt Clock because it's just, sometimes it's strangely mesmerizing to click on that and watch that thing spin. The expose, on and on and on, the Defender, Children's Health Defense News. If you want a good place to go get news about the things that are out there, but things that are really insightful articles. I don't write any of this stuff. These are just links to these websites. Make this your news landing page, because you will find useful information here. And when I want to look at what's going on in the world and get information on it, this is where I come. It's why I put it together, and I use it myself every day. But here's another story on Zero Hedge. I'll try to mix it up next time and have more stories from other sources. But I just wanted to bring this up. It ties in with the Bible video, the Revelation video that I am putting out tomorrow. It is, well, I'll show it to you. We'll pop the thumbnail up on the screen here. It looks like that. It's about the great prostitute, and it is Revelation 17:14-18, and the title is The Prostitute Must Die. It is about the fall of the economic, socio-political, cultural system that is going to happen before the last day. And this story is about the COMEX. Now, the COMEX is the exchange where precious metals are traded, where they're passed off. You know, it's not like you can do it entirely electronically because, well, gold has a physical presence, a reality, and so does silver and platinum and those other things. The headline, COMEX, silver registered ratio falls to 11.1%, lowest in 22 years. And there's a lot of techno stuff in this. I encourage you to read it. You'll be able to understand it. I'm not trying to be condescending, but I've been watching this stuff for some time, because what happens with the trading of gold and silver, the powers that be, the regulators, I won't go into the details of who they are, it doesn't matter. The central banks are involved, have allowed them at the COMEX to trade paper just like it's gold or silver, and to count it as assets. Think about that. They're able to trade gold and silver with paper and to buy futures contracts on things that are based entirely on paper. Now, eventually, that house of cards, where the cards are made of tissue paper, eventually it will collapse. The only question is, what will be the impetus, the catalyst that causes that collapse? And that is just one example of the precarious financial system that exists in our world. Another great threat is something called the euro dollar. And you hear euro dollar and you're thinking euros or some kind of weird. No, euro dollars are simply real American dollars, paper dollars, held by overseas institutions, not just European, but overseas institutions. They trade them and they leverage them. And the same thing goes on here at the COMEX with these paper contracts. They do derivative contracts where these things are leveraged hundreds to one. Hundreds to one. That blows away what Lehman Brothers was doing with the fall of the markets back in 2008. So just to keep in mind, when you see something about the COMEX, if you ever hear something about the euro dollar, it's a house of cards built on another house of cards, and eventually something happens that pulls the rug out from under it, and there will be a mighty crash, a real, true, calamitous fall. And it has been inevitable ever since we started the fiat currency clown show. It's inevitable that it will happen. What we have to do is look at it and understand it in the proper light that the scriptures talk about this very thing. If you go watch the videos on Revelation 17, the third one will be out tomorrow. I'll be doing one on Revelation 18 as well. It's made very clear that everything that we know and think of as normal when it comes to culture and economy is going to come to an end. So just something to keep in mind and to be prepared for. Man, I got a bunch of notes up there now. And yes, got a message from Aaron talking about Ephesians 6:12. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And that heavenly places, it's the spiritual realm. When Paul talks about putting on the full armor of God so that having done all we can stand, that is what he is talking about. And those terms that are used there in Ephesians 6 are about spiritual, cosmological forces and powers. So we need to adjust our thinking and be ready for the possibilities of what might come. And to some extent, we just have to pray that God helps us be ready to see the signs for what they are and to not panic, because this world is not my home. I'm just passing through. That's from Larry Norman back in 1973, the Christian musician Larry Norman. One last thing to look at. Just want to put out here and let you noodle on. This is one of these things that I have to be careful about. Now, if you go to the expose, and I do like the expose, they will ask you for money. And they ask you for money because it's going on with BitChute too. If you follow things on BitChute, hopefully you are aware, the banks in Great Britain just took their money away. They shut their accounts and said they can't have the money. And they've been fighting it in court. The expose has been fighting it since the beginning, since the end of October. They literally just took all their funds and won't let them have it. It is an assault because, and it's from the banks. It's from the banks, and none of the other media outlets care because they don't like the expose, because the expose puts out truthful, hard-hitting stuff like this story. Well, now I went and messed up. Go back. This happens in a live broadcast. You hit the back button when you didn't mean to. Here's the headline. I just saw this late in the day today. I read it. I looked at the material. One of the things I like about the expose, and it's also the case with things that these other news sources that I put out there on the helpful websites page do, they give you the sources. They give you the sources, and in the case of the expose, they copy and paste the documents in the article itself. We've been going for a while, so I don't want to stay on this too long. But U.S. Department of Defense issued a COVID, and now wait a minute, I got to be careful what I say. This word that's on the screen right now, I'm going to copy someone who I listen to and admire quite a bit, Mike Morales from Above Ground World News. He does a lot of wonderful stuff, a whole lot of wonderful stuff on the weather, and he calls the disease, so that he doesn't get in trouble, he calls the disease that is listed on the screen right now cornholio. Cornholio. So that he doesn't get striked. So the U.S. Department of Defense issued a cornholio research contract 3 months before cornholio was known officially to exist. Now, there have been a number of things, and when you look at, the lack of any real research for the inoculations that were jabbed into people's arms, and the lack of safety protocols, and we could talk about that stuff at length, but that's not why I brought this up. But there are all kinds of just flat out dishonest things out there, right? How could it be that the United States Department of Defense, and guess where this research was being done, where this funding, $21 million was sent to? Ukraine. And there were stories early on from sources that I trust talking about the number of U.S. owned and operated biolabs in Ukraine, and people in the State Department testifying before Congress about them, that they're there, and then all of a sudden they said they're not there. And then you've got this weird war over there. I don't know if we'll ever really know what all was going on with that Wag the Dog event, but I do believe this stuff is likely to be part of the convoluted deception going on. How could it be that before this disease was announced as existing, before it was there, how could it be that the U.S. Department of Defense issued a research grant and paid money out for that cornholio before it existed? I encourage you, go to these sources, go to the expose, find this article. I have to be careful on the platform on which this streaming live is going on, even what links I put in the description, because those words are there. They're bots search for these things. I'm going to push the margin, push the envelope as much as I can, but in the end, I do have to be very careful. But expose, and I showed all the articles and where they are. You can go look at them for yourself, and I encourage you to do that. Don't trust anything that anyone says. Now, there are people, when I go to these sources, when I go to my helpful websites, and Technocracy News and Trends. You know what I know about Patrick Wood? I've read his books. I know how he operates. I know the detail that he looks at before he publishes something. I trust him. He's kind of pre-vetted. Same thing with Tyler Durden, that fictional character name, at Zero Hedge, Rare Foundation, Dr. Mercola, James Perloff, Expose, the Defender Children's Health Network with Robert Kennedy Jr. I know the work they do and how they present things, but go and read things for yourself. It's very important to not just look at a headline and accept it as truth, because deception is real. And part of the deception is they use false operators, controlled opposition, to lead the opposite side. I put it out there on my Gab feed the other day. It was Lennon who said that the best way to control the opposition is to lead them. And that has been a practice for quite some time. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this. I hope you found it to be a blessing. I'm glad that you all were out there. I'm not able with my setup as it is here to see how many of you are out there, and it doesn't matter. It will build over time. I know that I feel compelled to do this. If I never get any support, if I'm just doing this entirely by myself, I will continue to do it for as long as I can scrape together the money to pay the internet bill, because the truth needs to be put out there. It is important, if you know the truth, to speak. It's in the little intro thing that I have, and some of you may have seen it. I've got it on my About page. Quote from a man named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a Lutheran pastor who at the time of World War II right before World War II, had come over to the United States and was working and studying, and he saw what was going on, not just, but in the Christian community being locked away by the Nazis, and he went back. He went back to minister to those people, and he's the one who said, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil." God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. And that's a big part, and you can read the rest of it. Good explanation of why I do what I do. But I think that in doing this live stream, we have the opportunity to build a community in which we support one another, and in that building of a community, I'm inviting you to join in. I'm not asking for support. I hate the terminology. I view it rather as I am inviting you to join us in what we do. If we receive support, if that support grows, then we're able to do more and more. This wouldn't just be a part-time venture if there is enough support. And I don't know what the Lord has in mind. I just know that there are people out there who want to support, who want to help. And so I want to afford them the opportunity and invite them to do so. And you can do that. We've got a financial support tab on our website. You can go there and you can sign up on Patreon and become a patron for as little as you want. You can pick an amount and pledge support to what we do. And I do pray that what we do is a blessing to you. And on the note of prayer, I invite you to pray for this ministry. Pray that God would bless it. Pray that the word would get out there. And if you have a prayer request, use that contact link here on the website and send that prayer request to us, and we will be happy to lift up that prayer to the Lord. I thank you for listening. I thank you for watching. I pray it's a blessing to you. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. And next time, I'll tell you why I picked the moniker Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. God bless, and have a great day.